Jonathan Hardy.
Get the middle seat soon. First of all, I'd like to introduce my son Brendan. Instead of taking school today, I figured we'd give him a nice lesson, see how laws are made, and I think he's going to look at sausages in a whole new fashion at this point.
And your name, sir, is?
My name is Jonathan Hardy.
Okay.
And my template kind of messed up on my written testimony from my previous address, but I'm a resident of Meriden, Connecticut. And I strongly oppose the three gun laws we've been discussing today. First, I'm going to take the easiest one to slice away here, and that would be the firearm safety. Okay? My son has been around firearms most of his life under supervision, and you have to judge each individual child. As an instructor, when people come to me to teach their kids, I say you have to judge each individual child. Not all kids are going to be the same. You can't apply a flat blanket across the board. Brendan, when you were little, what were if you found a gun, what would you do?
I would stop, don't touch,
There you go.
and tell him
Tell him to don't.
don't. Yeah.
Now, he learned this when he was little. Unfortunately, the very good program that taught him that has been stigmatized by most of the schools in Connecticut. That is an NRA Eddie Eagle program that is designed to prevent children from becoming statistics and has been proven that it works. Maybe we should get back to doing what some of the flyover states do and educate kids so it's not just the parents, though I think as a gun owner it is my responsibility, but I think we should also be able to educate kids so that they know, especially I grew up in Hartford. There were guns everywhere when I was a kid from the mid-'70s to the mid-'90s. Are you crazy? And by the way, speaking of Ms. Porter's comments earlier, bus, car, whatever, it doesn't matter. I would be able to, if you guys would give me an exemption with the governor, I can walk 6 blocks over here and get you a gun. Nothing's going to stop me if I have that much intent. And I know Ms. Gonzalez would agree with me and Mr. Arsley would agree with me because I grew up in these neighborhoods. Now, let's talk about the restraining order issues. First of all, by the way, since you guys have had me here so long, I might have to be facing one of these restraining orders getting him home so late. But there's one of the things that's been missing in all of this is it is not 14 days. I am the permit analyst for the Connecticut Citizens Defense League. I'm an executive in the organization. What everybody was missing today is Connecticut has a suitability clause with pistol permits. Because of that suitability clause, once your permit has been temporarily yanked, now you have to go back and probably reapply depending on which town, because that's not applied evenly across the board. And now it is 26 months for you to go through that process for what could be a hearsay. Now, speaking of hearsay, Senator Flexner had made a comment about risk-borne applicants are more likely to be honest. I could also tell you that so are gun owners that have pistol permits. I can prove it. I have to have a background check done at the state level, a background check done at the federal level. Then I get investigated by the local issuing authority, and I haven't even bought a gun yet, because to buy that gun, I have to have another federal background check done. And I have to pass all that. Gun owners, bar none, are typically your more honest citizens because they have no criminal record. I told my friend's daughter, you know, make sure she dates somebody that's a gun owner because they had all the background checks already done. The doctor that was cavalier with the statistics before, that kind of frustrated me because, granted, was a Hartford resident, grew up here. I'm not going to use Common Core math because we'll be here till 6 a.m. But what I would like to say is, at more than 250,000 pistol permits in the state, and 1 million gun owners that don't have, or 250,000 gun owners that don't have permits, whether they're hunters, heirlooms, handed down to them, whatever, the 10% number he used, we would end up with having 50,000 shootings in this state, and I don't think we've gotten there. Gun owners, far and none, are typically much safer. I think we would also like to look at the criminals that acquire guns. Let's look and see with these restraining orders. Let's see with these kids coming across guns, how many of them have permits? That's one statistic that we never have. And I heard my dinner was ready, so Mr. Dubitsky, I wanted to bring up the due process. One rights really depend on suitability. And going through that process, because it's such a vague word and it's unique to Connecticut statutes, and that we are a may issue, not a shall issue state, like 34 states are, because of that, going through a restraining order, once the local issuing authority knows that there's been police at your house, it's most of the time it's automatically going to be a denial, and then you got to wait and go through this process, which is now going to be 26 months at that point.
Are there questions for Mr. Hardy? Representative Rabimbis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not so much a question as much as just a few comments. First, if you don't mind, I'm going to speak to your son. His name was Brandon. Your name's Brandon, correct? I want to first and foremost just point out, say thank you very much for coming up here with your father. You must be so proud of your father as well for being so active and outspoken and literally educating a lot of us on certainly gun rights and regulations, and obviously he's taught you the safety when you see a gun, and that was evident. But again, with that proudness, though, it certainly is an experience for you to be up here. And I hope it wasn't too boring for you all day. I don't know how you kept awake. But with that certainly said, I mean, we always welcome young kids up here. It is a learning process. And as long as these days are, the wonderful thing is hearing from everyone on all sides of points, of issues, of arguments. There's a lot of information that we learn, and hopefully we can turn that around and make good laws and to protect everyone, whether you're a child or an adult. So I just want to, again, just welcome you personally to this whole process, and hopefully we'll see you in the future up here testifying before us as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do other members have questions? Representative Dubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hardy, could you you mentioned the suitability clause. I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about. Can you just
Most applicants don't know.
Well, can you just explain what that is and why? You mentioned 26 months. We had heard testimony about 2 years. Are we talking about the same period of time or
Yes,
different period
if you
of time?
go to the Board of Firearms Permit Examiners websites, you can look. 2 years would be as of March. They're already into April and May. Adding on top of the 24 months plus 2 months would be 26 months of 2017 right now for that appeals process. The problem we have is with the multi-tiered pistol permit process we have here, with these restraining orders have been coming up. I get about 2 or 3 citizens in Connecticut a week that have restraining order problems when it comes to pistol permits. And what happens is once they've gone through an ex parte process, because police officers were called at that residence, now when this person goes to either A, get their permit reinstated, or B, if they already did the training and they go to apply for a permit, suitability is going to say you have no criminal record. Under 34 other states in the country, you would be able to get your permit. But in Connecticut, they're going to say, nah, the cops came to your house too many times. Well, we're going to deny you now and have you go to the firearms board. And suitability in general just means anything that they can call into question. They can interviewing your neighbors, anything along those lines. What some towns actually go way, way ridiculous, and they want credit background checks and all that stuff. So, but they do all this stuff to gauge suitability.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So I think so. We're really talking about 2 different periods of time. After let's say somebody has a temporary restraining order issued against them, goes to a hearing and has it rejected. So they don't have a permanent restraining order, and the temporary restraining order is lifted. But they've already given up their permit and their firearms. So you're saying that they now have to reapply for the permit. Correct me if I'm wrong. They reapply for a permit and they go through the reapplication process, and if at the end of that process they're denied, then the 26-month appeal period starts. So we're really talking about how long is the initial application period?
It's by law, it's supposed to be 60 days, but more than 2/3 of the towns in the state of Connecticut do not follow the law. Middletown took 11 months to process my permit, but by statute, under 2928, it's 60 days.
Okay, so let's say let's use.
So that's in addition, by the way, to the 26 months.
Okay, so let's use your scenario. So if you had a temporary restraining order lifted and you reapplied, let's say it took 11 months and you were denied, and then you would apply for you would appeal to the Board of Firearms Examiners, and that's when the 26-month clock starts. So we could really be talking about well over 3 years.
Correct, and that's why if I do like the statute that we currently have, that seems like I'm surprised nobody knew it existed, the phantom statute, because it's not ex parte, it forces both parties to appear. If we were going to continue with any of this type of legislation, you really kind of have to put something in the language that says that you're going to waive suitability because it's not fair on hearsay to use suitability to deny somebody a permit. And what has been said here before by a couple of people, when I was a child, I was in a house that had a lot of abuse. They say walk a mile in someone's shoes. I've got a quarter of a mile of scars on my back. So I've been there. But let me tell you one thing I've learned, and a lot of my students have learned as time went on. God made man, same cult made him equal. Give everybody a chance to defend themselves.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, and thank you. Are there others with questions? Thank you, Mr. Hardy and Brandon.
Mr. Kissel, I'm disappointed. You used to challenge me.
You did such a great job. How could I challenge you?
Jonathan Perlow.
Did you leave your